Hi, and a huge Christmas welcome to Steve's Kitchen. Today's show is brought to you with a sprinkle of fun and a bucket full of happiness because I'm making my second favourite mince pie. It's the sweet short crust. Now, I made my favourite mince pie last week, which is the short crust pastry, which is not sweet. These are really delicious, by the way. I'm a little bit peculiar. I like them because they're more savoury. Today is a short crust, but it's a sweet, more like a shortbread. This is so delicious. And if you haven't made mince pies before, you're going to be knocked out by the taste of these. I would love to actually hear in the comments what the best mince pie you've ever had. And if you decide to make these, I'd like to know what you think. We're going to start with 450 grams. That's a pound of all-purpose flour. Now, this recipe actually works well with gluten-free flour. If you want to use gluten-free, go for it. The next item is a slightly salted butter. I've got 230 grams, that's 8 ounces of beautiful buttery goodness. I've cut it up into small cubes just to make it a little more easy to handle. What we're going to do with that butter is just coat it over with the flour and then rub it between your fingers and your thumbs until you get what feels like a sort of loose breadcrumb. Sure, you can actually do this in a processor, but trust me, this way is just as simple. And by doing it by hand, you get a real melt-in-the-mouth pastry. Now, some people will say to use cold butter. I never think it makes a difference. You've just got to end up warming the butter in your fingers. So you might as well start with soft room temperature butter. Now, I've got 2.5 ounces, 75 grams. This is superfine sugar, caster sugar we call it. And it's just to sweeten the pastry slightly. I'm just going to mix that through this beautiful crumb, get an even distribution. Next, we want to take 3 medium eggs. And we're going to keep the whites separate. I am actually going to be using the whites, but we just separate out the yolks and pop them in with our crumb. Now, the egg yolks are another form of fat and another way of keeping this pastry lovely and short, but it's also going to bind this pastry together. We're now going to take a fork and just break these yolks up and start to fold them gently into the mix. We're also going to need a very small amount of water. Ideally, the water should be chilled. I'm going to put 3 to 4 tablespoons in with my pastry. And what I'm hoping to see here is the pastry start to ball together. Now, it's still quite crummy, but it's clumping nicely. So I'm going to take the fork out of there now, and I'm going to use my hands to gently squeeze this pastry into a ball. Now, you want that pastry to come away from the bowl like that, but you don't want it to be too sticky, but still nice and light and crumbly. What I want to do now is chill this for about 30 minutes before we roll it out. Now, my pastry has chilled a little bit. I'm just going to divide it about 1/3 and 2/3 just to make it easier to work with. I'm going to dust my counter with a little bit of flour. We don't want to overwork our pastry, but I'm just going to make it into a square. A little more flour underneath, a little bit of flour on the top, and then we're just going to roll this out till it's about 1/4 inch. Now, don't worry if the pastry cracks a little bit, you can just use your hands to push it back together, and occasionally you'll need to flour underneath and on top just to stop it from sticking. Now, roll my pastry till it's about 1/4 inch thick. Now, I always travel with my pastry cutters. I want a 3.5 inch cutter, but the biggest one is 3 inch. So I'm pretty sure that's why they make the lid 3.5 inch. So I'm going to use the lid to cut out 12 3.5 inch. Now we can stack up our pastry cases, the inside of our cases, or if you've got room, you can actually just put them straight into your pastry tins. Now, I'm using a fairly deep patty pan. It's the way I like to make my mince pies. I'm just going to take each of those. I'm just going to gently ease it into the pan. A week or so back, I made this beautiful mincemeat. This is homemade. It is absolutely delicious. It hasn't had time to mature completely, but it's still going to taste better than anything you've ever had in the shops. We're going to fill up the mince pie casings. You want to fill them up fairly generously, but not overfill them, because it will try to bubble over the top, but that can just add to the beauty of a mince pie. Okay, we're going to flour our countertop again, and this time we're rolling out our pastry just to cut the tops. This time we are going to use the 3 inch cutter, so it makes a nice little lid for our mince pies. So I'm just going to cut out 12 mince pie tops. Now, I'm just making 12 mince pies. Do not waste this extra pastry. Of course, you can make a mince pie pasty with it. Now, the egg white that we kept, I've just beaten it up a little bit, and I've got the lid of a mince pie here. We're just going to brush a little bit of egg white onto it, and then we can just pop the pie lid on top, give it a little push down. And then we're just going to brush some egg white on the top of all of the pies. And then we want to sprinkle the top of these pies before they go in the oven fairly liberally with some caster sugar. And I'm just going to cut a couple of little holes in the top of the mince pie to let out the steam and the pressure as they cook. Because of the sugar content in this pastry, we're going to cook this at a lower temperature than we would normally do. I've preheated my oven to 150 degrees Celsius, that's 300 Fahrenheit, and we're going to bake these for about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit under. Just keep an eye on them, they want to be a nice golden brown. The house smells great, come and have a look at these. Now they're piping hot, there's a little bit of juice bubbling out just the way I like them. I'm going to let them cool down for 2 or 3 minutes and then I'm going to pop them onto this cooling rack and let them completely cool down. Now I know some of you will be doubting Thomases out there and say, what is Steve on about a Cornish pasty with mincemeat? Come and take a look at these. And we'll just let our mince pasties cool down a little bit too. Now they're still a little bit hot. I have actually sprinkled over a little extra caster sugar. I like this one with the juice just starting to pour out the top. I'll cut this open so you can see inside just how beautiful that is. This smells so good. Now talk to me in the comments. If you've never made mince pies before, let me know. Let me know if you're thinking of making mince pies and which one of the 2 recipes I've just put up you'd prefer. Whilst you do that, I'm going to tuck in and take a bite of this. It smells so good. Hot. The pastry is like shortbread, it's just melting in my mouth. The spices from the mincemeat is just delicious. Let me know what you're all up to this Christmas. I hope you have a wonderful time and I hope you make some mince pies. Be good, and I will see you very shortly in another episode of Steve's Kitchen. Take care.